Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking the time to spend with us. I guess now it's the post-lunch slack, isn't it? So you're just sitting down, having a coffee, sandwiches, now just taking a load off. We've actually got something really good for you to listen to. However, we're just having a slight technical issue in getting the slides to work with the video, so bear with us for a moment. In the meantime, though, at 2 o'clock, which is a bit, stops at 5 to 3. Go over to the campaign management stage where they're actually looking at the influencer awards. So if you're interested in the social piece and how that converts, go and have a look at the campaign management theatre and have a listen to how they're talking about the influencer awards over there. But just bear with us another moment or two and we shall be with you. Okay, that's better. Excellent. Thank you very much for your patience. We're back with you. It's quite interesting that we're talking about social-first brands because it doesn't seem so many years ago that we were talking about user-generated content and getting our customers to become brand ambassadors and to actually get involved with helping us sell product to people. So quite looking forward to this. So Zaria from Duolingo, please. Thank you very much.
So when I was in 3rd grade, I was suspended for accidentally making a YouTube video go viral about why students shouldn't be attending my strict Catholic school. To this day, if you ask my dad, he'll begrudgingly tell you he's made more trips to the principal's office for me than for my other siblings combined. Needless to say, I probably should have expected a career in social media was in my future. Hi, I'm Zaria, otherwise known as the Duolingo Owl on TikTok. Perhaps you've seen a video of an owl twerking on a conference room table or attending the Eras tour. Well, that was my chaotic brain. Now, today I'm going to tell you the truth behind our socials, the ins and outs, and kind of the rulebook we've created. But before I jump in, I should probably tell you what Duolingo is. At its core, it's a language learning app with the mission to make education accessible. But as we're branching more into education, we've actually launched a math app and now a music app as well. And we've done a pretty great job at it. But I'm here to talk to you about our TikTok more than the actual language learning part. And at this point, we have over 13 million followers, 850 million views, and we've really redefined what a brand can be on TikTok, especially a tech brand. Now, this social strategy that I'm talking to you today has really had a halo effect on the Duolingo brand. What started off as day-to-day content has actually transformed to shareholder letters, seeing our stock price increase, and constantly raising the bar for what marketing can be. In fact, we've seen 150% year-over-year growth in social impressions, and it's really driven awareness about our brand and has made an impact on our business and our business model. Now, when it comes to my job in social, I could talk to you about a lot of things. I could talk to you about getting legal approval, how to get people on board, maybe even what to do when you've been canceled. Or I can spend the next 40 minutes absolutely bullshitting each and every single one of you. And the truth is, I would assume about 10% of this stream would probably catch on, and those people would be the ones who are actually making the content, who understand what it means to be on a social media team, and the impact this job can have on a business that's small and culture at large. And spoiler alert, no, it's not just posting cute pictures on Instagram. Now, when we talk about disruption in marketing, it's often a lengthy definition in sans serif text that doesn't really make sense. But to me, being a disruptor is actually not really about being revolutionary. In fact, it's usually about following innate human truths that we all know and feel in our gut, yet we still end up denying. For example, I skip ads, you probably skip ads. Yet, in the US, we spend about $460 billion a year on flashy 30-second spots. So why do we do it? Well, because it creates a gap between what we know is good work and what we're putting out there. And this gap can be caused by a lot of different things. It can be caused by just having a lean team, not really having creative freedom, not having budget, or it could be because we don't have the time to invest critical thought and energy into redeveloping our entire strategy. Because if we do that, that means there has to be space for failure and making mistakes and maybe even getting canceled. Now, when I was growing up, I was always crossing the line. I usually said or did something I shouldn't have. I didn't have that innate human thing where it just tells you to stop crossing the line, stop pushing the buttons, just be okay and do what everybody else is doing. And to make matters worse, in a family filled of doctors and engineers and people in finance, I decided to be an owl on TikTok. So you can imagine that conversation. Now, it wasn't until I was older that I realized the secret that adults were hiding from us was that troublemakers are actually the ones that cause seismic cultural shifts. They take the time and the energy to cause trouble. They don't mind being wrong and addressing the wrong. But the tough thing about human nature is that we truly fear change, yet it's what we yearn for most. We want to be the disruptive brand. We want to be the viral brand. We want to be the one that everyone's talking about, but we don't want to be the ones to press the big red button. So that begs the question, how do you find disruptors? How do you find the people who want to press the big red button? How do you even become that person? The key to being a successful disruptor, in my eyes, really boils down to two things. One, understanding calculated risk, and two, my personal favorite, pissing someone off. At Duolingo, I've defined calculated risk as a consciously bold decision that marries intention with impact. Essentially, the risk is worth the reward if there's a clear positive goal in the end. It's not just about being unhinged to be unhinged. It's about being strategically unhinged, knowing what you're doing, why you're doing, and where you want to get to with it. So this goal could be brand awareness, it could be new users, it could be corporate social responsibility. It's more about how do I get this message across to the people I want to advertise to get them to do what goal I want. And most of the time, it's not traditional advertising. The truth is, the cost of disruption is risk. And the intrinsic nature of risk is you're going to piss someone off. You just have to make sure it isn't the wrong person. So let's do a fun little experiment. Can you raise your hand if you've ever had an idea flat out rejected? Okay, a good amount of y'all, welcome. If your hand was not raised, either you are the boss that says no, or you're lying to me. Either way, this next part of the talk is specifically for you to how to empower your teams, how to empower people around you to take risks and be bold on social. Now, number one, truly new things rarely need an abundance of money. And I'm not saying defund your social teams, only have one person now, like that's an excuse. It truly is that if we could buy new inventions, the rich would absolutely have a monopoly on everything that's new. You could just pour money into things and it would happen. But scarcity actually builds innovation, and that could be the young are really great at this. They really usually don't have the money or the empowerment, and the poor, again, not really having money or access. But when I do say this was helpful for Duolingo's success, but on the flip side, we also had creative freedom. It's about picking and choosing what you want to give and what you want to take, but not just taking everything and expecting insane results. Now, these were 3 campaigns we had. We had Duolingo featured in the Barbie movie, which was actually just a natural, organic thing that happened. But we decided to make it a bigger deal. So we actually had Duo dress up as Barbie and negotiated with Warner Bros. To have Duo walk the pink carpet. This video itself had 25 million views, more than what is actually in the movie. And I think the whole cost of Duo's costume was about $400, and it went insanely viral. The next video was actually from the World Cup. We did an entire campaign. We had a social agency to help us. And the one video that went really viral was this meme about the Moroccan girl at that time, and it got 12 million views. And then again, which we'll jump into a little bit later, we did a whole April Fool's stunt about Duolingo having his own Disney ice show. And the video that actually truly went viral was just clips that we edited to an anime. Finding trends, though, can be difficult, and I think there is helpful ways to find direction on what are things you can jump in on when you don't have an abundance of money. So first off, if the sound has around 30,000 uses, it's in a really nice space where it's not so niche that nobody's not going to get it, but it's also big enough that people are starting to have conversation around it. And if it keeps popping up in your For You page. A lot of the content we create at Duo is people scrolling and finding commonalities and figuring out ways to integrate our brand. And lastly, if your favorite creator is using it. There's a reason why you're engaged with this creator, and there's probably a reason why they're using it too. Now, you can't plan virality, but you can plan mentality. I wish I had a huge go viral button, as I'm sure all of us wish we did for our brands. But the truth is, really gaining that muscle takes time, experimentation, and testing and learning. So this is a borrowed slide from one of my really good friends, but I thought it was interesting of how they talk about how trends actually happen. So there's this mass audience and this niche audience. So niche goes from this is hilarious to I've seen this already, mass audience, I haven't seen it, to this is hilarious. So it's kind of vice versa of each other. Now, usually I would think of niche audience as TikTok wife and mass audience as Reels husband. So you're used to things seeing on TikTok, and then it kind of blows up on Instagram later. The sweet spot of where you want your content to be is right in the middle. You do not want it to be oversaturated, and you don't want it to be so niche that nobody knows what you're talking about. Now, this is actually research done from the TikTok team themselves in the US, and it's really about the way a trend is formed. We have trend moments, so I'm sure you guys have seen very mindful, very demure. That's a trend moment. This one was about finding a guy in finance. Again, trend moment. But a trend signal is something that really shows user behavior and is more long tail. And like this, for example, like cottagecore, de-influencing, and so on and so forth. Now, trend forces are where we all want to be, ideally, but we kind of have to jump through these places to be long-term successful as a brand on social. And trend forces, I would think of more day-to-day content being important than campaign content, or the fact that video content is more consumed than any other form of content on social now. Your age is not your superpower. As much as I love being Gen Z and I love having my moment, I know Gen Alpha is right around the corner. And there's people older than me too that have much to add and have really paved the way for social to be what it is today. My favorite story is of Legal Steve, who is actually our real general legal counsel at Duolingo. And when I first started at Duolingo, I was the only social media hire, and he would actually always come up to me and be like, we have to be on TikTok. I have these ideas, we have to be on TikTok. Let's see how we can make it work. And he is now his own influencer in his own right. You can follow him at Legal Steve. And he's actually been a part of a lot of our narratives that we've built out and the storylines we've built on Duolingo's TikTok. Beyond that, baby boomers are actually getting on TikTok more than you might think they are. TikTok is one of the fastest growing apps for their use. I mean, they still are on Facebook, don't get me wrong, but they're engaged and they're interested. And 78% of Gen Z and millennials say they have learned a lot from content created by people older than them. Nursing home residents, retirement home people, they're all very active, and it's an untapped category that we really haven't talked about. And they just love watching videos of senior citizens. And this is all to say that it's not about age. It really should never be. People from any walk of life, any background, any business can do something remarkable. I mean, this is just an example of another TikTok creator that just really kills it, and he's definitely not Gen Z. Your ordinary is someone else's extraordinary. So when I first started at Duolingo, the biggest struggle I had was I was convinced that we were a language learning app, there's no way to make that cool or relevant, and there's no point in doing it. In fact, I didn't even start our TikTok until a year and a half into my career because I thought I would just be okay just posting Happy Earth Day photos. We launched a new course, kind of typical what you'd expect from a language learning app. And if you scroll back to the beginning of our TikTok, a lot of it is, again, what you'd expect. People teaching slang words and so on and so forth. But your ordinary is someone else's extraordinary. So how does this look in practice? So the Getty Museum actually explained how they earthquake-proof their ceramic artifacts, and this video got 60% more views than average. This is just a normal thing that they do, but they realized that people wanted to see behind the fourth wall. Again, this Wild Rivers Water Park in Irvine, California, shared how they safety-proof the slides every morning before people come on board. Again, none of us probably knew this was a thing, but they got 400,000 views just on this video. And they're not an iconic brand, they're not a big tech brand, they're really just another ordinary industry. And this can also apply to really big brands like Ralph Lauren. I hear from a lot of ends of the spectrum of our brand's so small and nobody knows us to our brand is so big, there's no way we can be innovative, legal won't approve of anything. And of course, Ralph Lauren had money to get lucky Nara Smith's husband, but the concept still would have been strong, I believe, without him. The fact that they had adult models interview kid models and really just show the human truth behind what being a kid model is something I never thought I'd be interested in until I watched this, and 12 million other people thought the same. You have to ground yourself in your brand's strength and double down. I think a lot of the times we get really caught up in what we can't do, what we don't have access to, but we all have things that are true to our brand that we know matter, and it's part of the reason maybe why we're even working there, and we just have to figure out how to exhibit it in a way that people care about. So for us, ours was obviously the Duolingo mascot suit. We had to serialize and scale it. If you look at this data, you can see when we realized the owl actually mattered. As much as I loved being the face of our content, nobody gave a crap about me. They cared about seeing the owl, and we realized that, and we kept iterating it. And if you look at that, you can really see how viewership just spiked the second we started serializing and scaling what we knew worked. And I say a lot of brands do this. I think Chipotle owns influencers. They know how to work with them, they know how to surprise and delight them, they know how to get them posting about their brand. And they've even adopted viral TikTok menu hacks into their strategy and even had like weekend sales where they would sell these things. So truly, they know how to integrate influencers into their content. Poppy owns experiential. I don't know if you guys saw this online, but the whole Poppy World experience out in Soho had people literally standing in the rain to attend this brand event. And everything was branded, down from the drinks that were handed out to them to the merch they could buy, and they sold out. Of course, again, they have money, but they realize that we can use our budget towards being social first and dump it into something that people will actually share. And Jellycat owns UGC. From New York to Paris to even London, their whole Jellycat Cafe experience is something remarkable. And honestly, I know it's something Duolingo wants to emulate themselves. They're able to hire people and employees who are engaged and excited and make this the experience that people want to document. And Skims owns Hot Celeb Moments. They have the budget and they know how to lean into it and figure out who they want to make their brand ambassadors. Again, Duolingo does not have the money, so we will not be doing this. And I know a lot of other brands don't have the money to do this, but it shows that if you are a big brand, you can figure out where you can spend your budget effectively to really double down on what works. So this is one of my favorite quotes, is the grass is greener on the other side, so always water the grass on your side. It's a little bit cheesy and tacky, but it's true. It's all about leaning into what you know works and make it amazing and scale it out. Now, you can be the thing and subvert the thing. A lot of the times, people ask me, how do you get away with what you do? How is it okay that like the owl is completely unhinged on TikTok and in the app it's teaching my daughter how to speak Spanish? And the truth is, human beings are messy. Think about the closest people in your life. Are you going to befriend someone who only talks about the benefits they bring to you? Are you going to befriend someone who only cares about themselves and sounds like they're always talking to themselves? Probably not. You're going to talk to someone who you go on a journey with, who teaches you something, who makes you laugh, who kind of pisses you off sometimes, like we did when we updated our app, and so on and so forth. People have now allowed us to be the thing and subvert the thing. The Duolingo owl is 100% a form of satire. We kind of make fun of internet culture. The fact that a big green owl is doing a lot of the trends you and I might do, or big creators might do, is really being the thing and subverting the thing. So this is an example of an April Fool's campaign that we did that was driven by our community and really just leaned into being the thing and subverting the thing. So for this video, we quite literally leaned into people in our comment section always saying French or the trend, Spanish or vanish, and so on and so forth. And we actually flew out to Nashville, Tennessee to find this fake lawyer ad production company, and they actually make, these are, in their eyes, real lawyer ads, but we've all kind of seen them, the cheesy jingle, and they just created this for Duolingo, and it was significantly more cheaper than leaning into an actual big production company and faking this when you can make it real. And the actual phone number at the time was something that you could call into and report the Duolingo owl. You can go to the next slide. So you won't know where the line is unless you cross it. This was one of the best advice I've ever received because a lot of the times in social you have to take risks, you have to push your brand outside of what you know, and knowing where that line is really hard when no one else has really done it before. And now we're starting to get more rule books and guides for how to really work within the TikTok world. But like YouTube Shorts is next, right? There's always going to be something new. So figuring out the space to create for your teams to cross the line, to learn from that and iterate on that is really crucial. Now, this is one of my favorite diagrams because it really talks through how do you become the one that's willing to take the risk. And at the anatomy of taking a risk really jumps from knowing how to go from the comfort zone to being in the growth zone and always having that mindset. So when you think about content creation, for example, say you want to be an influencer and create content on your own channel, not even for a brand, you kind of go through this process. So comfort zone might be content creation is a pipe dream, but I don't want it, I can't do it. The fear zone, my friends will laugh at me, they'll judge me for posting, I'm definitely not good enough. Then the learning zone, and this is the hardest. Jumping from the fear zone to the learning zone is the most difficult thing to do, but good managers of social media managers and good bosses will help you get to that point of I hit upload and my stomach is churning and I don't know if I'm about to fail. And hopefully you'll get to the growth zone eventually. I'm not saying it's an immediate jump. There's gonna be moments where you actually are gonna fail and it's not gonna look pretty. But then you get to the growth zone of I figured out the hook and this is how I'm gonna scale it. And this can be done to content. It can really be accessible to anything in your life. And the truth is, right, fear is expensive because growth and comfort cannot coexist. So really learning how to be someone who embodies taking risks and inspires your team to do it, and if you have direct reports, inspiring them to do it is crucial to being a disruptor on social. Now, number one, you can't label yourself. I think a lot of the times we say our brand is, for us, for example, like we're an education app, we can never even be in the same conversation as like Wendy's on Twitter or McDonald's or so on and so forth. But the second you start doing that, you start restricting yourself from what you actually can be. You have to calculate the impact of fear. I will not lie, I do not think that every single brand is capable of going viral. It's just, that kind of defeats the purpose of what going viral means. But really calculate what the impact of fear is. If this boss doesn't approve this idea, probably not gonna get the viewership. But if they do approve this idea, maybe you'll get canceled, right? Like there are spaces in between that, but really sitting down before just saying no immediately and understanding what the impact of not doing something is just as important of calculating the impact of doing something. Next is defining good. Everybody's industry is different and everyone should have a North Star where they want to go and what good looks like in their industry. Again, what's good at Duolingo might be something totally different for your brand, and understanding what that actually looks like and manifests as is important. And these should all be active conversations you're having with your social team before you jump into just randomly doing things to go viral. And lastly, decide what tactical steps actually need to happen to break into the learning zone. That is a really hard transition to make, and understanding and making sure your team is set up to take those risks and go into the learning zone should be part of your OKRs, they should be part of what you're measuring, and it really is what evolves a brand. Now, this is an example of how our Japan team moved from the comfort zone to the growth zone. So, if you know Japanese culture, this was pretty crazy to put out there. But the insight was really about how a lot of translations in Japan are not translated correctly to English, and it completely changes the meaning of everything. And this was a pretty big brand risk at the time because, duh. And it ended up being super successful. People loved it. They thought it was innovative. They never saw a Japanese brand do it before, and it worked. So you have to know your human truth, what your North Star is. At Duolingo, our human truth is language learning is hard, so we make it fun. And we've sold this into every level of senior management, senior leadership. They know we have this rule book. They know this is our North Star, so they know when we're pitching ideas, it always comes back to this. And building this took about 2 years. And I know it's just one sentence, and it sounds kind of obvious, but that is a joy of a human insight. It's so simple, but takes so long to get to the core of what we're trying to do. And our audience truth, this is probably applicable to anyone who wants to target Gen Z, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before, but Gen Z wants to be entertained, not sold to. And again, I don't know if Gen Z should be every brand's audience. I mean, they do drive social, but at the end of the day, Gen Alpha's coming. Sometimes your brand is more relevant to Gen X. I don't think we should all always be targeting Gen Z. And even at Duolingo, we're trying to target more Gen Xers now because they're the ones that actually have the money to buy things. This is the core of our human truth, and it was this year's April Fool's joke. I'll play it and we'll talk through it a little bit. So for this video, we really tried to lean into what having a brand partner could help to elevate the joke. So we actually partnered with the SeatGeek team to make these fake tickets available. But it really played on a lot of different things. So there's a lot of the people, the extras were actually creators. So we kind of invigorated those fan bases who are excited to see their favorite influencers in there. We used storylines from our community that we built on social. And it really was one of our first social first campaigns front to end. And it was a massive success. People loved it. People are still asking for the show. We made exclusive merch for it, the fairy wands and sweatshirts, and they all sold out pretty much instantly. So again, that's truly the power of knowing your human truth and seeing it manifest in so many different ways. Because the truth is, language learning is not at the center of your thoughts, and that's okay. We have to meet you where you're at. If we're lucky, people usually on the internet are talking about language learning in the sense that they hate their foreign language teacher, they hate our app, our sentences are stupid, and if we're super lucky, they're probably confusing us with Dua Lipa, which is actually how that storyline was built into our social. So it's about finding the things that people are saying and being okay with you not being the center of their thoughts. Because the truth is, our brands are probably 5 seconds of everybody's day. Now, I can rant on about this, of this being disruptive and risk-taking is important and all that jargon that we're used to, but there is a reason of why I define this as impactful. And I think we can talk in a language we can all speak, money. So on average in the US, and this is a little bit of a cheaper average, for $9.50, you can get about 1,000 impressions. This could be based on paid, production, the cost of costumes, so on and so forth. And we're now actually at almost 850 million organic views, but if you even take it back to 950, which was the average of 2023, that is a $6.5 million media value, all for the cost of a Duolingo owl suit, an iPhone, a couple of campaigns, so maybe put that into about the $1 million range for the past 4 years. That's still almost $5.5 million media value for, $1 million. And that's really the impact of being disruptive, of going through these exercises, taking the time to figure out what your brand can't do, what your brand should do, really taking the time to close that acknowledgement gap. Now, truly at its core, disruption and social-first marketing is about dreaming big, but iterating small. When we started, we were not starting with Duo twerking on a conference room table. It started off with a small meme, and it slowly became what it is today. But really having a vision of where you want to bring the brand and having buy-in from every corner is incredibly important. And it takes being a disruptor, it takes pissing people off, and it kind of takes thinking on your feet and changing things as it goes and being okay with testing, learning, and failing. So I always do a lot of social media hacks. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. But more importantly, I want to answer your questions. We have about 12 minutes. So if you guys have any questions, it is now time for open Q&A. Yes. Oh, there's a mic right behind you, sorry.
So you know how you said jumping on a sound trending at about 30k views is great. Mm-hmm. How do you get over the barrier of you can't use sounds as a brand because you're not licensed to?
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest thing, so in the Duolingo perspective, because we have Duolingo Music, we have access to a lot of sounds, so I know that's like an unfair advantage. But the way that content is actually evolving now, it's going away from trends and more to skit-based content, where we're seeing people kind of go back to like the original concepting of what art directors and copywriters used to do, but bring it into social-first formats. So I don't know if you saw, like, I'm sure a lot of you saw it, but like the symphony trend with Zara Larson's song. A lot of brands were trying to hop onto that. They actually had people like record it later, like other studio artists, other creators, got the permission to use it, paid them significantly less money, right, than paying Zara Larson for it, and still were able to use the trend and go pretty viral. So I think a lot of it is about finding workarounds and also knowing, like, how can I use this concept that's going viral and still maybe apply it to an original skit or concept that we can do ourselves, is how we kind of approach it. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, so I have a question regarding brands jumping onto trends, and that actually kind of kills a trend really fast, like how it did with Demure. So I want to know how, as a brand, you would kind of navigate this changing landscape.
Yeah, so I think it kind of goes back to the migration of a trend that I kind of touched on earlier, like finding that sweet spot. I think the biggest thing is, like, for us, the people who are creating a lot of our TikTok content, including myself, are naturally native to TikTok, and they're on it, they're aware of it. And I know a lot of brands don't always have access to that many resources, so there's also a lot of people who are part of writers' rooms and content creators that brands use as like resources and consultants to actually help you kind of navigate. I think the truth of it is it's pretty intuitive. If you know the platform, you can kind of tell like what people are saying silence brand to and what they want brands to enact with. And I think that's actually a great example, because Very Demure, Very Mindful was like canceled so quickly, but the Finance Bros one, people were like super into brands doing. So I think it's a lot of also your social content team should be pretty active and have their ear on the ground with social listening. We use also a lot of social listening tools, so search up words like fall off, or like, I think put your fries in a bag is like a new Gen Alpha term. So I'm learning this stuff, but like stuff like that where it's like, okay, we're seeing a lot of mentions of this when we associate it with this trend, so therefore it's probably not worth us jumping on. If that makes sense. Any other? Oh, over there.
First of all, like, incredible talk.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Just curious, sorry, if, assuming you're aware of the ban that's coming up with the FTC on October 14th, and how that impacts influencer marketing, specifically with the $43,000 penalty that's coming for every influencer post that's not authenticated by a customer.
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Thank you for that hefty question. I think honestly it's about, I mean, that's kind of how we started too, when we were doing a lot of like testing and learning stuff and figuring out all these new things, even with like the TikTok ban coming, how do you accommodate? And I think for us, it's about taking a step back and realizing, like, if we're gonna build out a concept, an idea, and how to build on that, and also just figure out the rules of spaces that we can navigate within, I think we all have to accommodate to that. So I think candidly, like, we haven't had many conversations about it yet, but I'm sure it's something that's gonna come up and we have to work with.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah.
You're like really brilliant.
Oh, you're so sweet, thank you.
I want to second that and say the talk was amazing. But I wanted to ask, what would your advice be for an agency that's got a performance-driven DNA that's looking to extract some things from social first thinking? How would you go about that?
Yeah, so actually at Duolingo, the most new users we get is from performance marketing still. So organic marketing has all been to just kind of build brand awareness, culture, conversation, PR. So the way our performance marketing now kind of is working is they're actually using some of these unhinged concepts into what they're creating and putting out there, which has been a really fun experiment. I would not say it's as deep as like an owl twerking, for example, but we're finding ways and lessons that we can take from what we've seen organically do well and incorporate that into actual performance marketing. I think the mindset is the same. It's, again, just knowing your audience. I'd say performance marketing is more broad, so making sure you're not niching yourself out. That's kind of how we've been approaching it. But performance marketing still is our #1 growth lever for new users, so it's still very relevant and important. And it's just about kind of twisting it on its head, using these same mindsets to make things more social first through concepting, through seeing what people are saying in your community and incorporating that into what you're putting out there.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Over here.
Oh, yes.
Hey, Zaria. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So within the app itself, what was the idea behind creating characters, incorporating characters into the app? And does Zaria have anything to do? Is that based on you, or are the other characters also based on the employees of Duolingo?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is like also serendipitous, and I think that also with Duolingo success, it was like right timing, right place as well. The Duolingo bird actually exists because our co-founder hates the color green and hates birds, and our CEO, to mock him, made the Duolingo owl. And like that's kind of the humanness of it. Like I wish there was like a deeper strategy of like we chose this owl and it means knowledge and that's why it's green. But that's how that came to life. But because they saw the success of that, we actually had a studios and content team that built out our cast of characters because people liked being talked to when they were learning a language. They liked having those one-on-one conversations. So those were strategically built out by people who actually helped build out Sesame Street. So they brought in like more intense people who actually know character building versus mocking somebody. And Zari, I actually don't know if she's named after me, but I'll pretend. Yeah, sure she is. But there is someone else on our social team named Lily, and Lily's another world character, so we always joke, but it is not confirmed lore that she's named after me. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, yeah. First of all, again, amazing talk, super interesting.
Thank you.
I've been seeing a lot of brands now move towards this kind of character dynamic where they have this kind of like reality TV show setting to their content. I was wondering in terms of, number one, analyzing trend signals, and number two, how brands can actually capitalize on these trends moving towards kind of character-based content, where you see that going in the future and how brands could then look to leverage that in the future.
Yeah, I think candidly, I actually see character-based content declining rapidly. And something like for Duolingo, like that's right, like we're all character-based, so that's something we've been thinking about. And it's really been about thinking about product virality and new ways and actually having parts of our product that are more shareable than what we're used to, which is like obviously a very big ask as a social media manager or somebody in marketing to get somebody in product to do something. But for example, like a lot of our content actually includes our app widgets, which was this whole initiative by the product team being like, we need to be more social first. People aren't really sharing our product. How do we do that? And we released these like Duolingo widgets of Duo having a meltdown throughout the hours, and it showed up on people's iPhone screens, and then we used that. That's still pretty character driven, but like we have different parts with like the open app. Like when you open app, there's that screen there. What can we say? What can we change for that? In between lessons, like what are things that we can put in that people share? So while character driven I think is important, I think a lot of brands can dive in different ways. And also like I don't think day-to-day content should be everybody's growth lever. Like it's hard. Like sometimes you don't have a character and you don't have that. So what are ways we can use creators? I think Lyft does a really great job at this. They always lean into like new ways of optimizing creators. They recently used LinkedIn influencers, which I thought was really interesting. So finding different levers, I think, to really bring it in and not always depend on a character is actually pretty important.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was really good, really interesting, and I really love how you built your brand story through the owl and everything. And I just want to know, how do you turn this into conversions? How do you actually drive business through this? Because the story is one thing, but how do you actually transform that into actual business?
Yeah, so I think the thing with TikTok and YouTube Shorts as well is that people are very actively looking and searching for things to do and like convert and buy. We don't see as much conversion with like Reels, for example. So with this, we actually have a How Did You Hear About Us survey where TikTok and YouTube are one of the options where you can choose if I learned about Duolingo through this, and if people click that you can kind of see and scale it out. So for us, when we've seen a video over about 5 million views, we'll usually see an uptick in new users saying they came from How Did You Hear About Us? Naturally, we've been doing this for 4 years, so growth slows down. So we're trying to figure out, from social at least, so we're trying to figure out what are new platforms. We're launching more into long form YouTube now, of like ways that we can just get people to always see the brand in a new light. But that onboarding survey is really helpful for us to track conversion.
That lecture will stay there the whole time.
Is that everybody? Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much.